اسمحوا لي باسمكم جميعاً أن أرحب بالسيدة راضية السداوي لتدير الجلسة الثانية لهذا اليوم، وهي بعنوان الطاقة المستدامة وخلق فرص عمل في المنطقة العربية. فلتتفضل مشكورة.
السلام عليكم جميعا، مساء الخير. نعرف ان اخر سيشن هي all the time يعني صعبه، لكن نظن ان السبجكت يعني ديزيرف يكون عندنا اودينس، لان كنت نظن حنتكلموا فقط على الجوب كرييشن، لكن نظن كمان حنتكلموا على الجندر ايكواليتي، لان من الصبح ما كان في اي وومن حكت يعني في any of the sessions من الانترودكشن حتى الان، وبالتالي نظن it's worth to introduce it as well. حكينا على الانفستمنت وكذلك الفاينانسينج، and allow me that we'll be using the English language given that our panel is composed of different nationalities. We want to talk about sustainable energy in all its forms. It means that the real mix that's needed for the energy in different sectors, and more importantly, how we can do the real matching between the progress that we try to do in terms of the transformation of the energy systems from what we have today, dominance of fossil fuels, to diversified economies, and more importantly, to diversify as well the way we use our natural resources. The natural resources, more importantly than natural resources in terms of oil and gas, but also in terms of human resources. We try through this session and the eminent speakers that we have to try first to have two keynote speaker presentations where we look at the economic impact in terms of looking forward what the job creation would be through the transformation of the energy system, and we will have with us Anita from GIZ to present on that. And to complement this, we will have the focus on the GCC, while our colleague from the CAPSARC Research Institute did a very interesting job in terms of looking to job creation through sustainable energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. Allow me first to present the members of the panels. So we have with us, as I indicated, Dr. Sylvain Cote. He's the program director at the King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Renewable Center, CAPSARC. We have also Ms. Anita Richard, the project leader at GIZ. We have with us Dr. Osama Al-Sayer. He is the executive director of the Energy and Buildings Research Center at KISS Kuwait. And Dr. Hamid Sherwali, he is the chairperson, Renewable Energy Authority of Libya. We have as well Dr. Majid Mahmoud. He's the technical director at RIKRI in Egypt. And we cannot talk about job creation if we don't have the point of view of the youth and recently graduated students looking for jobs. So we have with us Ms. Zainab Mohammed, recently graduated from the American University of Kuwait. So in order first, before starting this discussion, allow me to invite Ms. Anita to make a short presentation on the economic impact. Anita, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Khadia. Thank you very much to the League of Arab States and to Kuwait for having us here. And I'm very honored to open this session with the keynote. I would like to talk about how modeling of scenarios can help to improve decision-making in the energy sector and to optimize economic and energy policy making. Actually, I probably need the thing to switch, or you just click. Next slide. I don't have the... Okay, so As we heard today already in the morning, and as we also experienced in Germany and in Europe, renewable energy and energy efficiency have the potential to really change the future energy system. And the big question is how they are going to change the energy system, but also our economies as a whole. And I think what we experience in our work in consulting different ministries in the region, we think that policy making in the energy sector and also energy planning is getting more and more complex because a lot of developments are going on in parallel. So you have a very fast technological change in terms of new renewables technologies, energy efficiency technologies. You have digitalization coming in. You have uncertain development of energy prices. And you have, on a global level, a discussion on climate protection, on prices for greenhouse gas emissions, that could influence also your energy system on the national level. And there, renewables and energy efficiency will create a new mix of energy sources. Maybe, for example, electric mobility will also create new demands and new supply structures. You will have maybe new market players and new market designs that require also new infrastructures. So you have a lot of uncertainties, and you have to take investment decisions today that will shape the energy infrastructure for a very long time. So this is a very complex task for energy planning. And if you are a policymaker who wants to go beyond the business as usual, who wants to embrace the new technologies, who wants to embrace also digitalization and so on, you will be confronted with a lot of questions that address the economic impacts of your decisions. So maybe your Ministry of Finance wants to know about costs and investment. Maybe interest groups wants to know what is going to be the employment effects of your policies. And the public, of course, is also interested to know what is going on with the economy if we introduce a new technology. So this is a very important link between the energy sector and the economy in general that is asked from energy policymakers. And it's about the optimal future energy mix, of course, in terms of cost efficiency, for example. You have to address also macroeconomic aspects like the costs for the state budget, what kind of effects renewables and energy efficiency will have on the growth perspective of your country, on the export balance, on energy subsidies, for example, and on tax revenues. What will it mean in terms of employment? And what do the changes in energy prices, for example, means for different income groups of households? So these are very complex questions if you combine them with the uncertainties in the energy sector development. And what helps to deal with this complexity is to develop different scenarios of futures and to compare them. And this is something that we would like to support as GIZ in our work and to help to establish scenario modeling in the policy process and to optimize energy and economic policy to answer these questions that I just mentioned. And to develop different scenarios of futures with different energy mixes, for example, with different times when to invest in renewables. Maybe you go for renewables now or in 10 years, and to compare these different pathways and compare the different outcomes it has on your economy is very important and can help you to find out what are the main influencing factors and what are robust trends and what are pathways that are no regret. So to go, for example, for solar energy right now and energy efficiency might be in all scenarios a cost-efficient solution. Yeah, this is something that is tackled by advanced modeling tools that combine, on the one hand, energy system modules and a module or a model on the macroeconomic system of a country. And they optimize these two components. And these tools are available and can be used tailor-made in every country. So maybe you know, of course, these tools from reports from large international and regional organizations, but as energy planning is getting so complex, then it is really worth to work on it also on a country-by-country case. Just to make also, to give you some examples on how to integrate these kind of scenario modeling in the policy process. The European Union, for example, developed an energy and climate strategy for 2030 and did a very large impact assessment. So this is only one of the results and one of the tables that shows the impact on jobs of the reduction of greenhouse gas emission of 40% in 2030 in Europe. And you see there let's say the positive and negative impacts on jobs for different energy subsectors. And just to mention what I always find astonishing in these kinds of analyses is that the real job motor or job creation takes place in the energy efficiency sector, which is often neglected, and I think this is an interesting result that we could also discuss here. Another example I would like to show is a study on the planned coal phase out in Germany. So Germany is just recently discussing on how long we will use coal in our power sector. And here is, this is an analysis showing the effects of an early phase out of coal, where you see a steep increase in jobs for some years, and also of output in the energy sector, because we would have to build a lot of gas-fired power stations and a lot of wind installations to cover the electricity demand. And then you would see that this would decrease again and come to a stable level, like the business as usual. So this is something which gives policymakers an impression on how this policy decision would affect the economy and the job creation or job losses in one sector. Just to get back to my last slide, how we think this impact assessments can be integrated in policymaking. We think that the quality of a dialogue between the policymakers and the modelers is very important, and not only, let's say, one policymaker, but really to involve everybody who is dealing with this specific decision, to bring them on one table and to agree on the inputs in these kinds of assessments. And of course it requires also the willingness to share data, to improve the database on economic factors, and of course also on the energy system. And what we also think is very important is to develop local capacities for energy and economy modeling in the MENA region, so that it's not necessary to always fly in experts from outside and to to write studies, but to have really think tanks, research institutes, but also capacities in ministries to run models and to react to specific questions of your ministers and to answer them in these kinds of scenarios. And our Ministry of for the Environment is supporting, for example, these kinds of scenario tools and capacity building already in Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. And we would like in the future also to establish a regional network on modeling, on energy economy modeling. And we are happy to invite think tanks and research institutes from the region to participate in that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. We take as one of the key points you addressed in integrating the energy modeling as a tool for policy design, and I believe some already started doing that, and that's why my colleague Sylvan at CAPSARC, they have been doing a great job looking to first on renewable energy in the GCC with case study of Saudi, and it's also through energy modeling exercise and extend to energy efficiency. I would like first to give the floor to Sylvan, and then we can go further in the discussion. Sylvan, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Before starting, I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present today, and particularly to Radia and my colleague Nicholas Ayworth from CAPSARC, who put a lot of time and effort into organizing this session. So what I would like to do today is sort of give you a broad overview of what, not only what the work program is that we're developing at CAPSARC, but give you some opportunities to, in some consideration, how we can think about this issue of job creation and energy renewables. So before I start, I'd like to tell you a bit about the work program we're about to develop. The idea of job, it's not about job creation, it's really about labor market dynamics. The interplay between demand and supply is very much what we're interested in, and we're focusing not only on energy renewables, but also energy efficiency. But we're not only interested in how people, the type of jobs people are getting in these sectors, but also those who create their own jobs in the field. So all the entrepreneurial ecosystem is something we want to develop in our work program. So the program will encompass data development, modeling, both CGE and agent-based modeling, micro-simulation, but also analysis and also policy recommendation we can derive from some of the findings we'll do. Can I have the clicker, please? Can we have somebody technical here, because I'd like to go through my presentation. Always nicer with images. Looks like we have a battery problem, but I wait. Okay, so basically the presentation will be divided the following way. We're interested in looking at some of, we'll go sort of an overview of the evidence on potential employment opportunities in renewable energy sector. The presentation will focus on the renewable energy sector. And also some of the issues related to measurement. There are some issues that we should not lose sight of, and they're very important when we assess the potential for employment in this sector. And then we'll look at, we'll identify some of the main challenges in regard to the labor market. There's some issues that are very important, and they may act as constraints into some of these opportunities. And thirdly, we'll look at some of the, some consideration in terms of the potential policy areas that we can explore, that would help alleviate some of these labor market constraints. Excellent. So.
No. May I ask the team?
I think we. Okay, so just before, okay, so you're going to be, so I'll tell you when to, okay, that's good, perfect, teamwork. So before we look at some of the evidence, we need to set a bit the context. So in Saudi Arabia, there's Vision 2030, and Vision 2030 calls for the development of non-oil sectors, setting, obviously, energy renewable targets, reduce unemployment and increase participation rate, but also provide support for education and training. So if we look at some of the current and future development in Saudi Arabia, we look at some of the, we see that, energy renewable is very much in its infancy. So 3 projects have been put forward so far. There are plans to increase capacity to 9.5 gigawatts in 2023. But as I'm sure you're well aware, there's been an announcement a few weeks ago calling for the development of 200 gigawatts of capacity by 2030. And it was also announced at the same time that that latter project would create 100,000 jobs. And that's, so what is really the potential for job creation in the energy sector? Next, please. Yes, next, please. So the economic literature is, there's some variation, but overall there seems to be there's a lot of studies that claim that renewable energy technologies create more jobs than fossil fuel technology. That renewable is actually more labor intensive. And we see this here. This is a sort of an aggregation of 50 studies collected in the US, UK, Germany. And we see clearly that in terms of direct jobs, wind and solar are create more jobs than the more traditional energy sectors. There's some indirect and induced effect. I won't necessarily get into these details. We can talk about that a bit more later. But in terms of direct jobs, it seems to be undeniable, according to some of the studies, that there's a lot of potential here. But measurement is always, when we look at these studies as well, there's some caveats, and it's important to highlight them. a lot of announcements are made about energy renewables, and each time there's a project, there's a lot of, thousands of jobs attached to it. But the question in terms of measurement is very important. Are those jobs actually full-time or part-time, or is it the aggregation of part-time jobs? In terms of time dimension, are we talking about 3 years or 30 years? This is important. I will give you an example a bit later. And then there's always the about substitution. Are we actually creating new jobs, new net jobs, or are we just taking jobs from one sector and moving them to the energy renewable sector? And also the bigger picture, and that was mentioned in the presentation before, what about the macroeconomic impact? What if energy renewable would have an impact on electricity prices? What would be the impact on disposable income? And then down the road on some jobs and goods and services. So all I'm trying to say here is that when we look at these issues, we need to look at the bigger issue as well. Next, please. So some studies have been done by ARENA looking at the GCC, and we see that most of the jobs in the sector will be created in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And most of those jobs will be created in solar, which is not surprising, really. And if we look at CSP and utilities, actually 71%. And this is relevant because we're going to be focusing a bit more on solar farm for the next slide. So next slide, please. So when we think of renewables, we need to think in terms of phases. A lot of the jobs are actually created in some specific phases. And those are at the beginning, during the construction phase. So we see that most of the jobs are created during installation and operation and maintenance. Manufacturing has a potential to create employment as well, but it's an issue that hasn't really been, that is debated right now, but it's not clear whether this would make sense economically, because China makes panels very cheaply, and this is sort of an ongoing debate about whether there might be some bigger issues, bigger benefits, larger benefits in having manufacturing done in the GCC. But right now, if we take that out, it's installation and operation and maintenance would be where the jobs will be created. And this is important because we see that on the right side of the chart that for installation and grid connection, 90% of the jobs would be done, by labor and construction. And if we look at the operation and maintenance phase, according to ARENA again, construction phase, construction workers would, take 48% of the jobs. Next, please. So the bigger question is that can renewable energy deliver new employment opportunities? So we look at the context, and this is some of the slides will be very familiar to you. The Saudi labor force is highly segmented and mostly male. There's 3 times as many foreign workers. Next, please. In terms of the participation rate is low, particularly for females. For males, it's a bit. If we look at the aggregation, it's low. It's very high in the prime years of people working life, but on average, at the aggregate, it's 62%. Females is very low. It's at 17%. It has gone down a little bit the last couple of years. It was at 19 recently. And in terms of unemployment is particularly high, particularly for females. But this is not unusual. The participation rate on the unemployment rate for young people is usually high or low if we talk about the participation rate, because the labor attachment of these people is rather weak at that time. So it increases with time, but in these early years, people are interested in investing themselves either in education or they're not quite ready for the world of work yet. Next, please. But there are some important challenges, and those are important, and they can act as constraints in some of these opportunities that we talked about. If renewable energy is very labor intensive and creates many job opportunities, here we'll see there's some constraints. Well, demographics is a familiar story in the GCC, particularly in Saudi Arabia. We see that the population is quite young. 50% of the population is under 25 years of age, almost 60% if we take those under 30. And when we talk about the demographic dividend, we see that the thick green line, we see that it coincides with some of these reforms that are taking place right now. If we look at Japan and the thin red line, we see that this demographic dividend coincided with a strong period of growth during the 70s and 80s. So this is important to see, and we see China as well. It's going through its demographic dividend as well. So there are opportunities. There's an emerging population coming up, and it's very important that there's an alignment. Next, please. But we see that the labor market there's a high concentration. People tend to focus in some very specific parts of the labor market. So the dark shade means that there's 50% plus of people in these bubbles. So in this case, Saudis are predominantly, in public administration, they're 98%, education 87%. So they tend to concentrate themselves very much in this part of the labor market. But what's interesting for us is that in the areas where there are a lot of jobs in renewables, they're fairly absent. Or so we see construction, there's 8% of Saudis in this area. Manufacturing, if ever there's a decision to go in that direction, there's 24%. So it seems that people right now, for different reasons, are not interested to go in these, and they prefer to stay in public employment, which in passing, there's 70% of all Saudis working in the public service. It's a familiar story across the GCC, by the way. Next, please. And you see that education is a reflection of that. The way labor market works is that if people get the signal that most of the jobs are in the public service, well, they will tend to respond to the signal by investing in fields that would actually guarantee them, entry in those sectors. So we see that quite clearly here on this chart, and we see that science and engineering are not as popular among students as social science. But most importantly, a lot of the jobs, especially technicians, electricians, are in vocational, and we see clearly that compared to other countries, Germany, I think, is around 50% as well. So we see that vocational educational program is really one area where improvement could take place. Next, please. But also, people might not even know about those jobs, so that's where information asymmetry comes into play. We see that many people don't have information, claim not to have information on some job opportunities in certain industries or even career path. And we see that it's mostly males in Saudi Arabia that seem to have this problem, and those are the ones who mostly would go into these areas, like the renewable sector. And so there's some improvement that could be made there as well. There's some efforts, but it's really one area where there could be a large payoff. Next, please. And when we think of all these constraints, we cannot forget also the impact of technology and automation. We know already automation is eliminating some jobs right now. Technology is replacing workers, and there's been a constant trend towards non-routine cognitive type of work. So upskilling has been going on in the labor market in many countries. This is for the US, but you would find this in many other countries as well. But the opportunity here, and we'll develop this in the next is that technology can actually also provide opportunities. So next, please. So there are many tools. Next, there are many tools that can be used to to alleviate a lot of these issues. And we see that human capital, information, and coordination are really at the center of all this. It's quite clear that people don't, there's more work that can be done in terms of providing the information to people early enough before they start investing in education at the university level or at the vocational level. So information could be conveyed much earlier in the life of individuals to incite them to go in some of these new sectors, new emerging sectors. And the training has to be aligned also with some of the needs, especially in the vocational fields. And obviously also in terms of coordination, there needs to be coordination not only across government with different entities, but there's also a need to have collaboration across stakeholders where industry and training centers and government all get together to discuss some of these issues. So to conclude, yes, there are challenges and opportunities in these sectors, but it's important to take on the challenges in order to prepare for the opportunities. Thank you.
Sorry for the technical problem. Actually, very important, I would say, takeaway from your presentation when we talk about the vocational programs within the Saudi as an example. So we do have this problem of matching between those who are looking for jobs and the institutions that create jobs and opportunities. We do have problem of segments of where we need to concentrate in terms of the added value of renewable energy, basically, but it's the same for energy efficiency. But more importantly, the challenge with the GCC, it's the issue of unemployment within the young generation. That's why I would like to listen to Osama from Kuwait. How you see the challenges for Kuwait, for example, when it comes to designing policies that integrates all the elements of job creation, integration, and more importantly, looking to energy efficiency, similar to what we talk about renewable energy.
Thank you, Radia. I'd like also to thank the organizers. Thank you very much for having me here. Radia, before actually addressing what you just said, let's just mention one thing. Now, Shigaya, the 10 megawatt renewable energy, we have only 3 operators running the show there, only 3. And probably if we have another 100 or 1,000, I don't think we need more than 5. The cleaning needs what? Once a month, maybe a robot, come back and forth. So to come back to your question, I do have 2 messages for our educators and academic organization when they come to what is really needed. What we really need to address is a sustainable energy system, which renewable energy is only part of it. Okay, this is really important. I have a supply side where renewable energy, with among other things, and I have to stress also with fossil, but I'm going to put lines under fossil fuel, clean fossil fuel. Probably new technologies that come in, the carbon capture, gas, and so on and so forth. You know, as a GCC, let me talk about Kuwait, probably also GCC and all oil, gas producing country, we have to deal with such resources. So again, supply side, I need to deal with this integrated ecosystem. And from my demand side, that's where the efficiency comes. And you know, in between, that's again, I having a growing infrastructure, more transmission lines, more distribution network, means I have more sensory equipment, more metering. I have more data. That's my bottom line, more data. And more data means what? More data processing. And the more data processing produce what? That's where come the mismanagement. That's why we need intelligence. That's why we need the smart. And I'm going to stress also in data processing. So we need interdisciplinary computer science, mathematicians. We need people who can process data with this vast infrastructure. We have a vast data, by the way. You know, more cities are coming. It's not about just to install more power stations and transmission lines. And, you know, as we know that more distributed generation are coming. And this might cause a challenge to our network. And we need to be able to deal with these such things. So we need power engineers who can process such data, who can deal with this data. So I'd like to be short that if we go into address of employment where we're going to focus on only renewable energy, as I gave the example, you know, I visited myself manufacturing institutes all over the world, and guess what? I don't see nobody. I see only robots who put, you know, the modules, who cuts everything. Probably I see you here and there, a couple of staff. So what I'm saying here, the future of robotics, the future for energy, I mean the data processing, intelligence, okay? It's a complete ecosystem that we have to work together. But however, again, I'm going to stress on this. If I'm going to focus only on renewable, and I'm going to think that only renewable going to create job for me, we should not count on this that much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Osama, and thanks you for complimenting what Sirwan just said, talking about technology. It can be opportunities and can be also challenges, and what you just highlighted indicated the potential in terms of the best use of technologies and making use as well of the potential of human resources that we need to educate to follow up with the progress in technology. The same if I want to go to North Africa and looking also to oil and gas producing country, Libya, and we have Mr. Dr. Hamid Sharwali. Also, you are representing the authority in Libya in terms of renewable energy efficiency, and I know you have maybe a different point of view, because I know that you try to more and more increase the share of renewable energy, working on reviewing the structure of, I would say, the sector within Libya in order to ensure that renewable energy and energy efficiency are taken, I would say, much more importance within the energy system. So what's your opinion from a producer perspective in terms of looking this mix of different sources of energy, which helps to the economic development of your country, and also how you see the potential for energy efficiency towards renewable energy in terms of job creation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Radia. Thank you for the organizers as well for this nice really gathering. Libya is an oil and gas producing country, as well as really have their very ambitious program for renewable energy. Unfortunately, the situation now is not helping us to move very fast. But anyway, the plan is there, and the oil industry is going on. As renewable energy moving on and going to take its share in renewable in energy production, we as oil and gas producing country believe that, in my opinion, started to take policies and started to take actions toward the education of our young engineers and newcomer, new workers, since I think renewable energy is not been really taking its a chance at the university and the colleges. Since years and a few years ago, we started to build this program at the university and the colleges. Oil industry in Libya is really not so much old. It started in the 60s, some 65, 64, start to be established. What's good about it is now involves more than 64 or 65,000 workers and employees. Most of them are really well educated and very well trained. This really resources, as renewable is going to grow up, I think should be used in building our renewables as well. Moving toward renewables, we believe that will not jeopardize the oil and gas sector, since we will still, I think, depend on gas and oil, and our share in renewable energy. We just started. We need enough time to adjust ourselves and take it apart. So, in my opinion, as one of the countries from those oil and gas producing countries, we don't feel that advancing renewable energy will jeopardize and will take a part of the employee of the oil industry. As long as we are still moving gradually, we are not having, a big movement as other countries that might take a lot of employees. So the program is going step by step, and we believe that renewables will not be the dominant or will not be the only or the big energy share in the energy mix in Libya, since of course it's the give of God that we have need the oil and the gas, and well, I think they will still keep using them since for years to come, even though the plan is up to 2030. 2030 we're gonna have at least 20% share from renewable energy in total energy mix. Yeah, thank you.
We are not talking about competition between fossil fuels and renewable energy, but complementarity. And obviously, the value chain on fossil fuels is much more extended. The same if we talk about electricity for renewable energy, then we have maybe complementary or additional, I would say, businesses that we can create. So listening now from this two-country perspective, but we have Rikri who have a vision on, I would say, the regional perspective that we work together with our colleague with Rikri in terms of looking how the design of policies today within the Arab countries independently who do have a different economic structure and endowment in terms of natural resources and human resources, but how, from your perspective, you see the gap and the, I would say, the design of policies today towards both increasing the much more renewable energy share in the energy mix, and more important, improving energy efficiency, but at the same time looking to job creation. So in your personal opinion and based on your expertise, Enrique, what's your personal assessment in that, and how you see the way forward in terms of looking at the required structure and the amendment and I would say reforms that need to be considered?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يعني اسمحوا لي أتكلم بالعربي في البداية. خالص الشكر لدولة الكويت أميراً وحكومة وشعباً على حفاوة اللقاء واستضافتنا هنا. والحقيقة أجمل ما في الكويت وفي دول الخليج هو شعبها، العنصر البشري. والحقيقة كل من قابلناه كان على درجة عالية من الكفاءة. فالعنصر البشري له علاقة كبيرة باللي احنا بنتناوله النهارده، فبنشكر حضراتكم، والحقيقه بشر رائعين وبينبئ بمستقبل اكثر روعه ان شاء الله، يعني باذن الله سبحانه وتعالى. Allow me to switch to English. You have asked me a difficult question, the operating structures and the gaps. And after hearing Dr. Osama, I partially agree with you. Simply, investment in anything means jobs. Whenever you invest, you would create jobs. And the statistical reports worldwide indicates that each 1 million invested in greener economies and in sustainable energy would create triple the time those invested jobs, 3 times jobs, those compared to those invested in conventional fuel technology. We are not competing. We are complementing each other, as Radia said. So spending on greener economy, on sustainable energy is an opportunity to have, okay, more jobs. I agree with you that tackling renewable energy from the large scale perspective, from utility scale projects, will not create that much jobs that people would think of. But there is another side of this coin. This another side is decentralized solutions. Decentralized solutions converting the the consumer to become a producer through different mechanisms, feed-in tariff, net metering, and so on. We heard a lot today from Dr. Akwa about the concepts of net metering, and which proved feasibility in Yemen. This would create much more jobs. This is proven also by our studies. And we have been conducting for the past 3 years a study in collaboration with GIZ focusing on employment opportunities. And in fact, the theme of the Energy Efficiency Day last year was about jobs and the role of energy efficiency first, and then renewable energy. This is where I agree with you. First, energy efficiency, and then renewable energy, decentralized solutions. And the future energy perspectives are all guiding us toward a very different future. And we are living it today, toward smart grids, toward electric vehicles, and so many things. The things that you have referred to regarding this coupling between IT technologies and the energy technologies. And all this would create, I'm looking for the jobs creation among the entire value chain. And what we have seen, based on our analysis, that there are plenty of indirect jobs that are created, and especially with decentralized solutions. So while we are planning for the future, the integrated planning, as you mentioned, is very important, but we need to consider, I would say, a significant portion to have it from decentralized solutions, to have a bigger role for energy efficiency solutions in different aspects, in the building sector, industrial sector, and so on. And in fact, looking into the selling proposition of going to energy efficiency, it is not the environmental domain. For the industry, it is not the energy security only, but there are added values for the industry, for example, or hotel sector and so on, to move ahead towards using sustainable energy solutions. And this is motivated by, first, the higher productivity, and then lower cost per unit of production. This is what really motivates the industrial sector to go ahead. And this is what is really happening in the market. Investing in cleaner technologies would create this opportunity. When we talk about what are the barriers, first of all, we need, I said, whenever we invest, we would create jobs in anything. Even if you invest in whatever, I will not say whatever you would invest, you would create some jobs. But you need to have first, so the first condition is to have a good investment environment. And this is linked, as we heard in the last session, to the regulatory framework, the policy framework, the investment in general, the macroeconomic situation, and many aspects. The second part of this is the part of the quality infrastructure of the education and the training services in the country and on the regional level. And in fact, we have found that there is a gap in this particular aspect. And this is why, in collaboration with the League of Arab States, we initiated for the energy efficiency first, a program called Certified Energy Management Professional, a regional program where we are certifying, helping, first of all, trying to help those who are working in the market to be energy efficiency experts, professionals that can help. And this is coupled by a legal framework in countries, in several countries. For example, Egypt, any consuming facility that is linked to the electricity grid that consumes above 500 kilowatt is mandated, any facility is mandated to have an energy efficiency professional. And this energy professional should be certified. And this certification process is either through the SEM, the Arab program, or the URM, for example, in Europe, or the SEM in the States. So there is an action. So this is a gap, and this is still taken also in the right direction on the regional level. The tools, one last thing. We have heard a lot about the issue of the coherence and the accuracy of data, and even the process itself is not that easy to collect data about the jobs creation. And this had been repeated by Anita and by our interesting presenter here. The issue here is to have it as a process within the institutions, to have a mandated body to do that. And in fact, to equip these institutions with the necessary tools to have it. And with this, we have collaborated last year with GWS, a German firm, which is taking the lead in the impact assessment, job impact assessment. And now we have, for Egypt, at least we started with Egypt, a tool that enables assessing the impact of renewable energy and energy efficiency, promotion on the employment market. And the findings of the study that right now, Egypt has 9,000 employees in the energy efficiency and renewable energy field. This is right now. This is not much among the 100 million, yes, but this is a good start. And based on, this is by the end of, 2016. Right, last year, the information that we received out of the 1,500 megawatts under construction in Benban, we have 6,000 local employment created there. So what we are saying that there are several aspects we need to look over all over the value chain. There are things to be adapted on different levels, and there are opportunities in both energy efficiency and renewable energy, given that we resort to decentralized solution as a first priority.
To Osama to comment, but I think when we made the presentation of Sylvan, we will indicated which segment we are talking about jobs. So basically, when we talk about construction, it's something, it happened in one period of time and we do the investment, but more importantly, we're talking about operation and maintenance. But all it depends on the context of the country. But you indicated the program of training, and that's why we have, I'm lucky that I managed to have one recently graduated student. You cannot imagine what I did to get this lady in the panel. I mobilized all our friends here in Kuwait universities to look at CVs, and we have with us Zainab. Zainab, she's just graduated from the American University of Kuwait on computer engineering, and I guess you listened to all what was presented today, and I think also the other sessions, and I believe when maybe before you selected to study computer engineering, you and your parents thought a lot about what you want to study, and more importantly, you look at the job market, what you can find as a job opportunities. And now, as you are graduated, I believe you're still also in a certain environment where you're still looking for opportunity that fits with your ambitions. So what do you think about this matching between the education program in place today, what you know, obviously, you cannot know all the one in the Arab countries, and how it's matching with the labor markets, and especially that we move to a certain transformation where we have new businesses. So can you just tell us from your perspective?
Thank you so much, Ms. Radia, for giving me the opportunity to be here with these amazing people, let's say. First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming, that's one, and listening to us. The most important thing, in my opinion, as a recent graduate is to involve youth, and that's why I'm speaking today on the behalf of the Arab youth and people who are graduating from universities and looking for a job and opportunities to just excel in their life. The problem that we have, and I think we didn't focus on today, let's say for the most sessions that I attended, is I'm so happy about the statistics and how our countries, the MENA region, is having so many achievements when it comes to the energy sector and how we are achieving and going with the energy demand. But the problem is we don't see a lot of youth in this session or in this hall. We need to involve youth in this steps that we are doing. And as you know, the world consumption for energy and the demand for energy is increasing, but yet we have so much little supply. So the problem that we face is the less knowledge about this problem when it comes to youth, and this goes back to the early stages of education. So when we go to schools, the only thing that we care about is how we can get good grades and how we can graduate with the highest GPAs or whatsoever, and then look for jobs in the prestigious areas or the market, for example, the oil sector or the banking. But yet, there are many job opportunities as were discussed here today, and the numbers are huge, but yet we don't have people involved in that. And maybe the problem is we need to have, as Dr. Osama said, we need to advertise for that. We need to let students know that, hey, look, there's some job opportunities that you can work for. You don't have to go to the oil sector and have them, for example, the salary or the benefits that you want. Especially that energy is the future, especially that we have this problem of the climate change, and the whole world is changing. We all have the newest iPhone or the newest smartphone, but yet our educational curriculum is established and created years ago, and yet we don't modify it. Imagine someone here walking with a Nokia phone. How would you think about that person? We have the same problem with our education. We need to just upgrade it and let kids know that we have this problem on Earth, and we can't live if we don't all together work on it and try to solve the problem. And you know that kids, they are so easy to be programmed, and yet when they get older, they will have this vision, oh, I want to work in the clean energy sector. I want to be, for example, a wind turbine technician. So why we don't hear these stuff? Why would we hear that I want to be an engineer or I want to be a doctor? That's what my parents told me too. So let's look for that. And especially from my experience, I took the class for renewable energy, and not because I wanted to take the class, because I wanted to take a subject so I can graduate. So that's the problem. And then I took this class as an elective. But when I started taking the class and just looking at the material, I was surprised by the amount of problems that we have and the amount of people are working and the effort that they are putting. So for example, one of it is the Shigaya city that we have here in Kuwait, and we had a field trip to the place, and we all were amazed by the effort and the money that's being invested that we don't know about. And even with Qasr, we had a program for internships with the American University of Kuwait, and before that, our capstone projects were all about robotics or self-driving cars. And now, whenever we established this internship program, we started to see some programs or some capstones about renewable energy, or students talking about self-automated cleaning PVs. So I guess we need to just look back and try to solve this problem. You are the present and we are the future, and together we can save our existence. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the audience. And thank you very much. That's why I wanted that the last person to speak on the panel would be you, because obviously we are talking about how to build resilient societies for the Arab countries. It cannot be built without involving the youth, and obviously without looking to the future generation. What we come up as, at least my assessment is corrected what you just said, that the real matchmaking and the awareness and the multi-stakeholder engagement is looking how the youth are involved in the aspect, not only in terms of awareness, but more importantly to the education system that to be reformed to follow upon that. So I have quite a few minutes to take questions from the audience, if someone have. Yes, I'll take the first one, and then Najib. Someone give the microphone.
Okay, just to save time, I'll say my question very fast here. One point very important was mentioned, no comments came on it really, was vocational education. I think our biggest problem in the Arab region is that everybody wants to get university degrees for jobs which are not needed. So when you talk about job opportunities, people should be encouraged, like Europe, to go for vocational training. Myself, originally I'm an architect, still I'm using a graphic designer in Holland while I'm living in Beirut because they go by talent to a vocational school, while in Lebanon and the Arab region, all those who want to do such a jobs want to get university degree, which is of no use.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the conference and the dear speakers. Actually, we all know that we have a problem of global warming. We have a problem of climate change. And actually, we have attended many of these conferences before. And we got long recommendations. Unfortunately, the recommendations did not achieve yet, or part of it. I believe part of the solving this problem is the early education and also to raise a generation, respect the environment, respect the recycling, respect the separation at home, not to cost too much to the government and not to rely on the government to solve the problem. Also, we expected that the superpowers who did not sign the treaty of the environment and produce CO2 to the air and increase the problem of global warming to sign this treaty and be obliged to go with the regulations. Thank you.
Thanks. Can we take another question? Further. Microphone, please. To Tariq.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Actually, it's a question probably to Dr. Osama, and in the context of where do we see the jobs of the future in the energy transition and the clean energy transition? And typically, we tend to focus on the job effect on the replacement or the production side of, let's say, clean energy technologies. But from our experience within UNIDO's programs, we see that if we focus on the entrepreneurial side of it, where what's called the fast-growing companies, we see quite a substantial job effect in certain sectors, particularly if you create a replacing sort of a new technology that not necessarily based on high intensity of R&D, but technology convergence, like more energy efficient equipment, and you try to create a market for that, not necessarily in the home country, but also in the regional market, then you're talking about quite substantial job creation potential. So have you started to look at the integrating the sort of the metrics, not necessarily on the replacement of the existing energy system, but it's the potential for fast-growing companies with, let's say, broader technology conversion solutions. That's where we see the jobs in some of the projects we worked with. Just an observation, because that's where actually most of our experience where the jobs can be.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. I want to be practical, Dr. Tariq. We're in the Middle East. At least let's take it from 10, I'm talking about 10 to 30 years to come. History proves that we're not going to reach high-tech kind of technology to be created here. So I am targeting a workforce in the IT. I know more penetration of renewable going to come into my network. I need more application development, IT application where I have to deal with data. I know that, as you said, metering, smart metering, and so on and so forth. I know I'm not going to factor these. You mentioned the energy efficient systems, whether they're AC, lighting, and this and that. We've seen this. Maybe there will be manufacturers in the maybe 20, 30 years from now. But I'm talking about within the mid to, I would say, almost long range, 20 years from now. IT, you know, that's my humble opinion, is the economic sector for this region to develop. Because at the end of the day, as I said, that I'm going to deal with data. I need to process these data, and I need something soft to bring it out fast. I'm not going to challenge Siemens or ABB or, you know, all these high-tech, you know, companies, you know. Again, you know, maybe I can track them, okay, but at least, you know, I can bring out these soft technologies where I can bring the youth, okay, to take action, to take really direct role into this. This is my, and please, Radi, just give me this. I don't want to get the impression that I'm anti-renewable. I'm not anti-renewable, I'm being practical. I'm talking about an integrated, sustainable energy system where renewable is part of it. We cannot address renewable away from the whole system, okay? So renewable is part of it, and we have to address the whole thing when it comes to manpower.
Thank you. I want to say to the session. I don't know what's happening with the microphone. We're not talking about replacement. We are talking about exactly, just to complement what you said, we believe that all sources of energies are not here to compete with each other. There will be economic growth within the region, and we will have growing demand. So all we contributed, it's not only about electricity. The sofa here is thanks to fossil fuel that we have it. And this is not based on renewables that we create electricity. We can have the sofa. So this is what we want to say. And obviously fossil fuels will continue, and we want tomorrow to address it through energy productivity, especially for oil and gas producing countries. I would like to take another intervention if possible. Yes, please, Siham.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a comment regarding the presentation from Dr. Silva. You were showing the potential job created with renewable energy. And my comment is, how do you handle the jobs that are not actually continuous? For example, you were talking about the Saudis as an example. You want more Saudis, say, to go into construction. So if you're doing a huge renewable energy project, construction, there's only a short period where there is a big job, but afterwards it all dies out. So how do you handle that aspect of things? Because even actually maintenance, there's not so many, but the construction is a good example of peak, and then we have like thousands of people. What do you do with them? Do you sack them after that? You have a different problem on your hands.
Yes, thank you for your question. Actually, I'm going to use this opportunity to enlarge a bit my answer. Renewables, the main point I was trying to make is that despite a lot of the noise we hear about renewables, one would specifically look at some of the constraints I raised and the cyclical nature also of the sector. A lot of the jobs are created at the beginning, construction, when you build a solar farm. It's like the profile of the job, over the 25-year of the project would be like this, and then the commissioning would go up at the end when it's taken all apart. But when we look at all the constraints, it appears that the benefits would be marginal. There'll be a lot of jobs created at a certain point of time, but they're not jobs that the nationals are interested in. This being said, there's still going to be some opportunities to sort of complement, some jobs, some value-added job with the technology, and that forces the educational system to be to be a bit more flexible in order, because the key here with all these changes that are happening is that you need to develop a resilient labor force. So you need to sort of give the labor force skills that will permit them to adapt over time. So a lot of the technical skills now are forcing, some of the workers sort of complement their skills with machines, and technology. And this is what my colleague talked about, and that's a very good point. So that's something that we need to be fearful, and not fearful, but there's opportunities, but we have to take this into consideration. But maybe the greatest opportunities for jobs may be in the development of an entrepreneurial ecosystem around these technologies, around these industries, where you could have, like a lot of value added into services and products that could be developed by the local population. And that's something that I think is very important. And we should, and it's both for energy renewable and energy efficiency. I think there's some opportunities there to look at all these, all the training which will go into place would permit people to actually, locals, more particularly, to take advantage of these new development, because there's a lot of changes, but the promise is to make the labor force flexible in order to be able to take on these new challenges as change is fast occurring.
Yes, please.
I just want to ask, why do you focus on the creating jobs through the mainstream institutes like universities? While, for example, why can't we work, or is there any schemes where, for example, funding parties can work with the beneficiaries, for example, not maybe in the big grids, or maybe in the decentralized mini-grids, where they can train the beneficiaries to take care of the facility afterwards. So it's going to be like a user cooperative model. Is there any focus on that? I think this can be very useful, especially in rural areas.
Very much. There is a potential when it comes to the Arab countries for the rural community through small-scale renewable energy technologies, decentralized system, and this is where you create job opportunities, you create businesses and develop entrepreneurship, and ensure that people develop themselves without relying fully on the government institutions. And this is what I think we should all work when it comes to decentralized system. This when I talk about renewable energy, and obviously, as a colleague said, energy efficiency would create much more opportunities. I don't know, Majid, if you want to comment on that.
Yes, I fully agree with you. You highlighted all the benefits. We need to keep in mind that although we are talking about the most of the jobs are created during the construction for the large scale, but the pipeline that is documented as per the targets of the Arab countries, I'm speaking on the regional level, is around 80,000 megawatts of utility scale projects. So these 80 gigawatts of projects would be up to, till now, the records up to 2035 and up to 2040, and I assume this would continue in the future because this is a political commitment from the highest leaderships. So, yes, they would stop working on one project, but they would engage in another project. And this would work, we would need more for the utility scale. On the decentralized solutions, yes, exactly, this is the point, that we empower the communities to have their own specialists, professionals in the installations, in the operation and maintenance, and also in the financial aspects, on the banking, on the lending, and so on, microfinance. There is a lot of things during this is why we are saying that the value chain is wide. It's not only the construction of the system or installation of the system. There are plenty of benefits, and we need to capture this. And again, the future would be much different from what we are seeing now. Those who are working in fueling station, but for electricity, hybrid grid. This is a new job that is created, for example. Maybe it's replaced. In fact, I'm worried about another thing here. There is a trend in the Arab region, which is called in the international community, creaming and barking. Creaming means that we are tending to get the job-ready citizens. And then they are, in fact, there is a fight on these top-notch professionals. But we are not making much effort to increase the capacities and the skills of those who are not job-ready. And this is where we need to focus. If we can leverage that and we get higher level of skills for those who are not yet ready, job-ready, this would be a real achievement. And this would make a real development, a sustainable development effect. So the issue of marking those who are not ready as skills, and only, in fact, I like very much the Kuwaiti intervention this morning when they say that restructuring the power sector would be also equipped with capacity development and having those who are working in the utility to be prepared for the upcoming restructure, having companies and so on. This is also opportunity for growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another question before concluding the session. Because we are already on the time session. I've just taken 4 minutes and it was exactly on time. I would like first to summarize all the key takeaway of this session. It was really difficult to have the eminent speakers in this session in order to have, for the first time, discussion on job creation, not in terms of looking in one direction, isolated from the different aspects on an integrated approach, where we look at, and especially we are in Kuwait, a country endowed with fossil fuel resources, but also looking to diversify its economy, and it's well reflected in its strategy, and more importantly, in terms of looking at the development of renewable energy in the energy mix. So we have identified there are challenges, obviously. One of them, and more importantly, how to match and redesign policies at the energy modeling stage, looking to introduce, number one, the aspect of job creation, and we see that CAPSAC have done a good research in this sense, as also GIZ. But I really liked the gender dimension that was included in the latest study, and how we see the different categories where we need to work. And obviously the vocational program that was well highlighted is very important. We are not here to educate only engineers, the technicians, and all categories of jobs that needed to be considered from the early stage of designing any project. More importantly, it's need to have a stakeholder engagement where we have different players, including the private sector, financial institution. But at the beginning, when designing policies, we need to have the youth engagement in order to see what's our new future generation looking for, and in order to look at as well how we are developing our economies. Another aspect also that comes from the discussion, that it needs much more looking from again, holistic approach, where we are not talking about replacement, we are talking about increasing demand, diversifying the economy, improving the economy, and more importantly, having better future for future generation. That fossil fuels would have a major role to play, but we do have as well renewable energy, and more importantly, energy efficiency, because the different sector, it's a key if we are talking about job creation. I would like to thank eminent speakers for all your valuable contribution. Thank you very much.
كل الشكر للمشاركين في هذه الجلسة، ويسرني دعوة مدير إدارة الطاقة ورئيس اللجنة التحضيرية للمنتدى في جامعة الدول العربية السيدة جميلة مطر لتكريم المشاركين، فلتتفضل مشكورة. السيدة راضية سداوي رئيس قسم الطاقة اسكوا. الدكتور سيلفن كوت مدير برنامج بمركز الملك عبد الله للدراسات والبحوث البترولية. السيدة أنيتا ريتشارد مدير مشروع بالوكالة الألمانية للتعاون الدولي. الدكتور أسامة الصايغ المدير التنفيذي لمركز بحوث الطاقة والبناء في معهد الكويت للأبحاث العلمية. الدكتور حميد الشروالي رئيس هيئة الطاقة المتجددة في ليبيا. الدكتور ماجد محمود المدير الفني بالمركز الإقليمي للطاقة المتجددة وكفاءة الطاقة. السيدة زينب محمد خريجة الجامعة الأمريكية بالكويت. إلى هنا ينتهي بإذن الله يوم المنتدى الأول، ونعاود اللقاء بكم غدا إن شاء الله الساعة 9 مع الجلسة الأولى، وشكرا.